Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome to Carnivore Radio. I'm really happy, Dr. Lopkin, because we have the old posse back, I guess you could say that. We got Chris Calandra, the old crew. Chris, thanks so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us. And
I've been looking forward to this all week.
So we were on terrestrial radio, Wesleyan, a place I graduated from. And Chris, it's supposed to be the beacon of liberalism. What the heck happened? Because we got our ass thrown out.
Yes. I don't know.
I remember the sign when we didn't. Wait, hold on real quick. I'm sorry. Remember the sign, like the open-minded geniuses and the signs they used to leave us? That was really nice, wasn't it?
Yes, not like the liberalism of the 60s, which was for open debate and much more narrow-minded today, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, that was, it is what it is. We move on to bigger and better things. So, Chris, you have not been with us since the election, and I would like your take on, and we don't want to rehash this for too long, but how are we in the situation? I think it's like having a good friend, but they kind of screwed up. Trump screwed up. Am I not correct? And if I'm not, that's fine.
No, I agree with that.
The first debate that was like, hello, like maybe shock therapy is in order? Like, really? So we are where we are, and it's funny and sad because Dr. Lopkin and I doing Carnivore Bites, it's the global media is starting to actually do stories on Biden's dementia. What do you think, Chris?
Yes, I am, as you guys know, an avid reader, and one of the places that I regularly read is the Daily Mail out of the UK, and you get some really good perspective from there. And they are harder on the Biden administration, I think, covering him more down the line than you find in places like the New York Times and the mainstream media, because if you look, and you don't even need to look that closely, there's a lot of worrisome signs, especially if you compare him today compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's such a stark
he was
difference.
never a Mensa candidate, but I can deal with that. But whoa, I mean, very, very interesting. I mean, we had this recent conflict, Chris, in the Middle East, and Netanyahu pretty much just said, "Yeah, I hear you, and have a good day." Am I not correct? I mean, and it's not just about Israel; it's about every international player. Despots and our friends are going, oh, God, it's open season, dude.
That could be the case. Look, the Middle East is always a mess, right, regardless who is president. But it was pretty calm during Trump's administration, and this flare-up is unsettling. We'll have to see how it plays out. Is this the sign of more bad things to come? History says that may very well be the case. But, Netanyahu and the Israelis, they're accustomed to dealing with Democrat administrations that tend not to be as supportive as Republican administrations. So they know their way around this stuff. And
but let me interject something, and I want your opinion. I'll throw out to Dr. Lopkin. I think Trump was a knuckle dragger, because the intelligence, just like Reagan was the, dummy, unfit for office, blah, blah, blah. He, just like Reagan did in the Cold War, not about Israel, but with the Cold War, but with Trump, he aligned himself with Israel, And guess what? Everything was falling into place. When you have a nebulous situation, you get screw-ups like we have now. That would never happen with Trump. Chris, first you, then Dr. Lopkin.
Well, it didn't happen with Trump, and maybe that's a little rough.
And it would
but
not.
I think fairly, his projection of strength and clear lines about what we were willing to tolerate and who was with us, I think was very helpful. And the Biden administration being a little more willy-nilly and wishy-washy, including walking back progress that was made in trying to corner Iran on the policy front, this is likely a manifestation of that projected weakness, and it's not very surprising. It really isn't very surprising that we have this split up, and it won't surprise me at all if we see more of this as things unfold.
Dr. Lopkin, carry the ball.
Chris has it absolutely right. I mean, Biden has backed away from all of the agreements that Trump brokered simply because Trump brokered them. So remember, we had a historic 5 peace treaties during the Trump years. Now he's going back into the Iran deal, which was a horrible deal to begin with. He's siding against Israel, calling for Israel to de-escalate when, it's Hamas is a known terrorist organization that started bombing them. But, I have no doubt that Israel will prevail in all of this. I'm not worried about Israel. They've dealt with this since the creation of the state. What really worries me is the fact that we are now seeing an escalation of anti-Semitic attacks here in America. And when the Democrats came out for Black Lives Matter and the Democrats came out for Stop Asian Hate, but when it's the Jews, the Democrats have gone radio silent.
Okay, Dr. Lopkin, amazing point. Why? I'm sorry to say, but it beats the alternative on my birthday, older than the both of you. But I remember when they were lockstep, Jews, Democrats, they were arm in arm. What happened first? You, Dr. Lopkin, then Chris. Now it's, you go out, shut up. Go ahead. Dr. Lopkin. How did it happen? 40 years ago, they were basically in bed together. What happened?
Yeah, we've seen over the past 10 years, well, actually longer than that, it started at the beginning of the Obama administration, that the Democrats have been backing away from the Jewish population. And now you've got, I can't believe I'm blanking on her name, the Palestinian congresswoman. Talita Rashid. You've got her banging the drum going, how dare they bomb Palestine? She has been out there spreading misinformation. She's yelling, Israel is just attacking civilians and they're attacking Muslim holy sites. Well, is that true? Sort of. They're attacking sites that Hamas and the Palestinians have been stockpiling weapons. The Palestinians have always stockpiled weapons at civilian and holy sites because they thought nobody would attack them.
Chris.
You've got this radical left just swinging for the fences, siding with terrorists. And now we're seeing the blowback here.
I got you, Chris. We talked, even when before we were unceremoniously dismissed from Wesleyan, we talked about traditional constituencies in the Democratic Party. My question to you, and I ask this to Dr. Lopkin, please help me. Why would any Jew be Democratic? You're voting against your own almost destruction. Help me out.
Yeah, I think it is a curious thing. I feel the same way about the black community's lockstep voting block with the Democrats. But, I agree with Eric. I would just like to add a broader point, Jeff, that you mentioned that some of this began with the Obama administration. And it seems to me that that also brought into the public discourse the idea that America is not a good country, that we are not the beacon of freedom. And there are lots of people in politics, especially on the Democratic side of the aisle, that really seem to have a lot of contempt and really want to focus on the mistakes, sometimes very legitimate, criticism of this country. And so when you look at what's happening in the Middle East, a lot of people in politics don't discern the difference between the Muslim countries and Israel, and there's the adage of that moral equivalency, and they look at Israel like they look at our country, that Israel isn't a good country, that they're
God,
not
that
so
is
great.
Beautiful, Chris. No, it's absolutely true. I'll also go a step further, that modern-day liberalism hates winners. Sounds weird, but you can maybe think about it later. They're always they never support the doers, Indians that come over here. They're always for they want an entitled class, so to speak, a dependent class, I should say, and the higher elites that feed on that. Chris?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think Israel represents a country. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I mean, if that's your worldview, and I agree with you, Jeff, then you're not likely to side with Israel because it's a democracy. It's a powerful country. It has had success. It's carved out a terrific economy for itself over these many decades, even though
all the things you
surrounded by enemies.
Yeah, all the things you hate as a liberal. That's a fact. And you know what they hate most? No one did it for them. How does that? That is the worst thing. Even like you talk about blacks. Everyone, they instead of celebrating black achievement, and there's many amazing, and I respect them beyond belief. People that have achieved, black people that have achieved amazing things. It's like an echo chamber. Ben Carson, really? He's like ostracized. Look at him. He's a brain surgeon. Chris?
Oh, wow, that is a great topic. If you look, and I'm a numbers guy, a financial geek, if you will.
Yes, you are.
But if you look at
good at it, by the way.
And if you look at statistics and you break it down, and I don't have these at my fingertips, but there are lots of black communities, Nigerians as an example. You mentioned Indians, people of color. When you break it down by sub-classifications, that earn more than the average white household. So I always have trouble squaring the idea that there is systematic racism and there is racism that holds people back from being successful. Granted, there is racism.
Oh, that is an amazing point.
But how is it that the Nigerian community, on average,
exactly? In fact, I have a real-life example. Yeah. And then we're going to let Dr. Lopkin kind of run with it after the break. When I graduated college, I lived on a campus. I wasn't going to college. I got an amazing program at Hubble, a really awesome company. And this guy, Willie, I still remember him. He was from Africa, and he didn't even have citizenship. He had a 3-family house. I lived in on the top, and he was amazing. He was an accountant, and yet he was screwed. It took him I don't know if I'm sure he got his citizenship, but yeah, it wasn't welcome to America. It was hey, fill out the forms and we'll let you know. And he was an amazing guy with a wife and a kid. He was amazing.
So let me just add one other statistic, and maybe we could get Eric's thought, but I believe this is close to accurate. Again, I'm doing this off the cuff. But when you look at people of color at Harvard, for example, and, there are complaints against Harvard because people of color are perhaps underrepresented. Maybe that's true, maybe not. But when you look, Nigerians account for, I think, roughly half of the people of color at Harvard. So then I start to think, well, is something else at play other than color? Are there other factors, cultural factors? Because it's difficult to square the color complaints, although it's part of it.
No, it's a fantastic lead-in after our break. Dr. Lopkin, would you agree? He teed off something that's
Yes,
amazing.
There is another cultural factor, and we will discuss that as soon as we come back. We'll be right back after this word.
To reach the next level, you need to operate at peak performance. The key to this is mastering the 7 elements of success. Learn how to master mindset, focus, operations, communications, innovation, evaluation metrics, and continuous improvement. Get the Biznetics Way at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and bookstores near you.
And we're back. And remember, if you want to be part of the conversation, you can call us at 563-999-3693. That's 563-999-3693. And yes,
thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. I'm going to throw it out to you. You guys have the show for the remaining period pretty much as it should be. And I just want to throw one thing out, which I actually do know. And then it's a free discussion between you gentlemen and our listeners. And that is, before the Great Society, gentlemen, where African Americans encountered amazing racism, like something I could never deal with. They had more intact marriages. They had less out-of-wedlock births. Church membership was higher than the white community. And these are people in the 60s that went through things that would rock our world. And after 50 years later, 60 years later, after the Great Society, we have a disaster. You guys do it up.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And, as Chris was saying, there is another cultural factor, and it has nothing to do with skin color. It's a focus on education. African American, or I should say black families, because let's face it, not all blacks come from Africa, and I know a number of them who absolutely hate being called African Americans because they come from the Dominican Republic. But they have a focus on education. They instill it in their kids to learn, to do well in school. And the folks that are not successful are the ones that, these are the kids, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter, that are hanging out in the hallways instead of going to class. They're the ones that don't take their education seriously. And even if they can't afford to go to college, some of them will take adult classes. Some will go to community colleges. They will keep learning, and that builds their careers. And that's where you see the most successful folks in any group.
Chris, I think Dr. Lopkin is a great point. I just have to interject with one thing. You're a business guy, very successful. When you take away the incentive for success, isn't that the pretext for disaster? In other words, why go to college? Why do if you're getting free money, free this, you over generations you lose your oomph.
Yes, and I think another cultural part of what we're speaking about is there's a study from a foundation, I forget which one, they call it the success sequence, that if you do 3 things, the chances of being in poverty go down dramatically. The 3 things are complete high school, don't have a baby out of wedlock, and I forget what the other one is. It's something like don't get married before 25, something like that. And then the chances that you're in poverty go down by 95%. Don't quote me on the statistics,
in America is almost 90%, Chris, self-induced.
Yes, and when you look at the black community, something like 76% of babies are born out of wedlock, and I'm not passing judgment on that. I'm not saying this as a Christian point of view, not a moral issue, but as an economic issue, it seems to be highly correlated. Having babies out of wedlock often means less economic success. I don't know how you solve that riddle, but it amazes me that kind of stuff is not talked about nearly as much as this systematic racism story that has dominated
because it doesn't serve an agenda.
Now.
Because it doesn't serve an agenda. Dr. Lopkin, isn't Chris 100% correct? The family is everything.
He is correct. I mean, as a father of two, I can tell you, having kids is very expensive. So if you're having kids young, and I think the correlation is more about having kids young than necessarily having them out of wedlock. But I think having them out of wedlock adds to the problem because the two parents haven't made that commitment to each other to raising the kids. I think you'd see that even if a kid is born out of wedlock, if the two parents have made a commitment to raising that child together and being a family, the wedlock part of it isn't going to matter. It's the commitment part of it.
Dr. Lopkin, I'm sorry. I have to disagree. Yeah, I agree that I'll be the best guy in the world and blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. It's easy to get out of things. Things get too tough. You're not – I'm someone who's divorced and not proud of that. But, yes, you have a family. There's ups and downs. I think the children benefit exponentially from that versus the single. All that stuff that we were taught about, even back to the 70s that, it's all cool, single parents. It's not all cool. When you have two parents, the kid has a much better foundation to succeed in life. And I'm sorry, I'm not a sociologist, but I truly believe that.
Yeah, they have a foundation, but again, it's not a piece of paper that's doing this. It's the commitment between the parents. And as somebody who grew up in a single parent home, not because they got divorced, but because my father passed away, I know the struggles that a single parent goes through. And yes, they can instill in their kids that same drive, even though they don't have a partner. The problem is when you have parents that are, again, not making that commitment to each other, to the kid, and they're still out for themselves. And that's the big difference. The other factor in this is the dependence that the Democrats are actually trying to instill. If you take a look at folks that depend on the system, and in this case, I'm going to refer specifically to the educational system. You cannot depend on the public school to do all of the work. The parents have to work with the kids. Here in Connecticut, Connecticut is actually one of the most segregated states. The funding for our educational system has been found to be unconstitutional by the courts because it discriminates against African American majority schools. And yet the Democrats have done nothing. Why? Because they don't want to admit they're making a mistake, because they need their voters to be dependent on them. So you cannot be dependent on the system. You have to instill from a young age the idea that your success is in your hands.
Yeah, but that goes completely against, Chris, I'm going to throw it out to you. That goes completely against the Democratic philosophy. They can't get enough of dependent people, correct?
Absolutely.
When you leave the reservation, you're screwed.
Yes, they want top-down control, and they want less independence, less pull yourself up from the bootstraps, less local dynamic thinking and decision-making. They want everything to flow out from the almighty Washington, D.C.
Okay, and how does this happen? How does it happen? Because I have thought about that, and hopefully, possibly you can help me, because I really don't know. Why are they so enamored with big government? What is it? I don't understand, because you're correct, 100% correct. Why is it? What happened in their lives? What happened in I don't know. Why are they so fixated on big government and they'll solve the problems. Is it intellectualism? I think Dr. Lopkin said it, intellectualism without any actual practical experience. I don't know. Chris, you're a business guy, successful person. What is it? I mean, it boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's a big question. There are people that believe greatly in the ability of the federal government to solve problems. And if you, a lot of people that believe that, they have noble intentions. Yes, in some instances it strays into elitism, but at the base argument, though, it's not. The idea that the government can be a force to help people level the playing field, enforce the rules, help people that need a helping hand. You know, there's a lot of nobility to the base argument about the federal government helping.
I would say what made America great, and we are close to losing that, was government, enforced contracts and certain other things, and that's what made America great, including immigrants coming here, any race, any religion, that is like kind of you're like on your own, you got this freedom, and look what happened. America, the 20th century, I'm not so sure about the 21st, was a century of America, case closed, was it not?
It was. And I think something that people fail to realize is that government didn't build this country. In the 19th century, the early 20th century, businesses built the railroads. Businesses built electrical grids. Businesses built roads. This was a country that was built by business. And then government went, well, you know what? We can't let businesses have that much power. We need to take it back. And I think at least part of the reason that they're focused on big government is, one, yes, you can do more if you have scale, but we're not electing anybody that's got any experience in actually getting anything done. But more importantly, big government requires big bureaucracy, which means a lot of workers. And if the Democrats are building the size of government, hiring more people, who are these people going to vote for?
Actually, I think it's a little more simplistic than that. I think when you go to these highfalutin universities and everything's theoretical, of course, why wouldn't you, Chris, closing argument, why wouldn't you want big government? You never worked a day in your life. Your father was blah, 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 but whatever. And it's all theoretical BS. Why wouldn't it work? Of course it works. You read, the Communist Manifesto? Of course it works. Chris, closing comments.
My closing comments would be that people that think that the government needs more power, more money, more control, they hold a lot of sway in this country today. And
increasingly.
I think that's a worrisome sign. And it amazes me that democratic communities, democratic cities, democratic states are largely losing the economic battle. So it amazes me that argument is winning the day when the actual results in so many places in this country would lead you to believe that you should do more of what Florida and Texas are doing and less of what Illinois and California is doing. It is a weird set of circumstances, in my opinion.
Dr. Lopkin, closing comments.
Yeah, I'm going to close this out with a quote from Ronald Reagan. The biggest lie is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
And Dr. Lopkin, isn't it amazing having Chris Calandra on our show again?
It absolutely is. It's great having the group back together again. You've been listening to Carnivore Radio.
We got disbanded.
We're here every Friday at 4 o'clock at blogtalkradio.com/Carnivore Radio. You can hear the replay of this as well as the Carnivore Bites podcast at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. We'll see you here next week.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Eric.
Bye.